Welcome to Guerrilla Sports Off Field. I am Liv Moods, and this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate or lower your monthly payments. So head to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you save some money today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, woohoo, woohoo. We're back. It's like if you're sick of us, too bad. We're back. We had a 4.5-hour show last night, Nate.
Yeah, is that all? Wow.
Crazy. We got to talk about a lot of things as it pertains to the Denver Broncos. We got to also sleep on that loss. It was a tough one. It was not exactly how we wanted that game to go, especially given the nature of how the game started. The game started in favor of the Denver Broncos. They had a really, really great first quarter, arguably one of their best first quarters this season. And then second half, big stinker fest. Couldn't do a whole lot in the second half, Nate.
Couldn't. I feel like I need a morning after pill this morning because I feel like I
actually agree.
It's
emotionally hungover.
Mm-hmm. What a disappointment. And there's a lot to go over today in the aftermath. Immediately after the game, you're feeling a certain way based on the roller coaster of it all, but then you kind of look at it and you start to diagnose what went wrong. But there's a lot of things that went right. And you mentioned that, in the first half, the Broncos looked fantastic. Coming on a short week, they had to fly. They had to go on the road on a Wednesday, which is, look, it's a condensed short week. Sometimes that's good for the players because it's not a mental week. It's more of a, not that it's not a mental week, but they're not putting in a complex game plan. Your routine is condensed. So it's like, okay, we play Sunday. Monday, we come in and watch the film. Maybe a little run, little lift. Tuesday, we actually have a practice, which is atypical of a normal week because Tuesday is usually everyone's day off. So that's actually your rest day. So there's no actual rest day when your game is on Thursday. So you practice Tuesday, but it's probably a light practice because you are accounting for that day of rest. And then Wednesday, you have a little practice in the morning, and then you fly. And then you're staying the night, and then the next day, you're playing. And so it happens really quick. The Broncos came out of the gate like we haven't seen them come out of the gate at all.
Yeah.
They force a punt from a 3-and-out punt from the Chargers on their first possession, and then they were able to march right down the field and score a touchdown. The Chargers did the same on their second possession, but then the Broncos scored another touchdown, and then another touchdown. And all of a sudden, it's 21-10 going into the end of the first half. But then that crazy play happened at the end of the first half, and we were talking, so we didn't really get to see it. But in the aftermath of
I've now seen it on social media about 7,000 too many times.
Yeah, 7,000 too many.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Right, and ultimately, it's a rule that has not been kind of exercised or seen in like 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very rare occurrence, and the way the rule is broken down is if you punt the ball and the opposing team fair catches it with zeros on the clock, you can do a free kick from that spot, and if you split the uprights, you get 3 points, and that's exactly what happened. On the strength of a penalty on Tremon Smith, I think his name was, interfered with a fair catcher, 15 yards, puts them in field goal range. They kicked the field goal, and that kind of switched the momentum a little bit. We talked about that a lot last night. It was about momentum at that point, and the Chargers started to feel it coming into their court. You got to think, you're going into halftime down, but when you score that field goal at the very end there, you're like, all right, you're feeling good about it. We're only down 1 score. Let's get the ball back. Let's go down the field. There's plenty of time. That's what they were able to do.
Yeah, I think I would love to see in the coming years with this Broncos team is just getting better against their division opponents. Because division games matter. You know that. I know that. They do matter, and they are a big deal. And I feel like for whatever reason, yes, they beat the Raiders twice. But the Raiders are also a hot damn mess. Garbaggio.
Greta Garbo.
Yeah, they're really, really, really effing bad. And even still, in that first game against the Raiders, we talk about momentum. It took a pick six by Pat Surtain to change the momentum against the Raiders. A very bad Raiders team. That's what it took. And so I would love to see this Broncos team get a little better in their division because we know the AFC West is not an easy division to play in. It's really not. And for many, many years, it's been very, very competitive. And I think as long as you've got Patrick Mahomes in there, it will remain very competitive. But how do they get over that hump? How do they get through the AFC West in a more comfortable fashion. They've now lost twice to the Chargers. They face the Chiefs at the end of the season. We don't know how that game's going to end, but I don't know. I just feel like division opponents, that's where I'd like to see them improve in the next few years.
Absolutely. When I played for the Broncos, the goal was always to win the division. It was not, let's go win the Super Bowl. Of course, that's our plan. But before you do that, you win the division. And if you do that, you get a home playoff game. It's really hard to go on the road in the playoffs and find a path to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
If you can win your division, have a home playoff game, then you can have an easier time. And so the Broncos are now 2-3 in the division this year. And they're about to be able to, they're about to play the Chiefs on January 5th and hopefully get to 500 in the division. If they lose to the Chiefs, they're 2-4 in the division and still might make the playoffs, which, to your point, is not good enough. And Sean Payton talked about that at the beginning of the season, or at least in advance of these Raiders games, that you got to win these division games. If you split, if you go 3-3 in the division, you're not really going to make any waves. You got to end up in the win column. They're not going to do that this year. And that's on this. And the only wins they've had was because the Raiders suck, right?
That's what.
And you just mentioned that. But the Chargers, they lost both games to the Chargers for the first time since 2010.
Yeah.
That was the Josh McDaniels era, the poopy era, the poopy era. And when I was playing for the Broncos, it was we were always beating the Chargers. Sometimes we would split. They had some good teams back then, but those divisional games are so important. And you felt that last night, how important that game was.
Yep.
It felt like a playoff game in the second half. It did. And the Chargers were able to match that energy, and the Broncos sort of wilted in that moment.
Yep.
And you wonder if that's a product of some of their inexperience. Right. It is a rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, who did not look good in that second half, who missed a couple throws that were like, big throws to miss, especially the one down the sideline to Marvin Mims. Yes, he was interfered with. And we can get into that about the refs screwing over the Broncos. We talked about that a little last night.
There's a lot of conversations about that.
Well, is it because they hate Sean Payton? Is it because they don't like him relative to his attitude? I mean, this was a guy who's in the crosshairs of the league. He had to sit out a year for lying to Roger Goodell over the Bountygate investigation. There was a lot of things that happened within that organization, aside from Bountygate, that cast them in a negative light. And so do the refs not like Sean Payton? Are the Broncos constantly going to face that? Sean Payton did allude to that in the press conference. Like, it's not the first time we've seen these flags be an issue. And I don't know if he was talking about my players are committing penalties or they're being called for things they're not doing.
Maybe he was saying a little bit of both.
I think
feel like he was sprinkling on both sides there.
And so you're going to have to fight against that.
Yeah.
The same way the Chiefs know they're going to have the refs in their pocket, the Broncos are not going to have the refs on their side. And so you're going to have to win in spite of the refs. The refs are never going to give the Broncos the benefit of the doubt. It seems that way. So you're going to have to go find a way to win. And ideally, Sean Payton is that good of a coach that he makes up that difference and then some.
Yeah.
But last night he did not.
He did not.
He did not. And so, I look at the differences between the two halves. The Broncos came out in the first half and established the run. And they did so
which they needed.
Very effectively. Exactly.
Yes.
And this is without Jaleel McLaughlin in there, Audric Estime, and what's his nuts? Javonte Williams.
What's his nuts? Javonte.
They were
we
looking,
apologize for that. We forgot your name for a second.
They had almost 100 yards in the first half.
Which is arguably one of the better halves we've seen with the run game.
Yeah. And so why did they not continue on that track in the second half? And in my opinion, it's because coaches like Sean Payton, they are not content to simply run the football all game and walk away with a W. They want to run.
Grow up, Sean.
They want to run to set up the pass. Because Sean Payton did not become the celebrated coach he was by running the football.
So Sean wanted to be the hero last night.
Well, he likes to win a certain way. He likes to soften them up in the running game and then open up the pass and take shots downfield, which I don't necessarily disagree with. But when it's in a playoff environment like that and you're having so much success and you see it on the ground and you see that your quarterback may be struggling a little bit in this moment, maybe lean a little bit more on the running game and don't, harken back to the old days with Drew Brees, because Bo Nix is not Drew Brees right now. No. He's a rookie quarterback in the most important games of the season. We have to find a way to keep him comfortable and not put him out of his mind, out of his body, which it seemed like he was yesterday a bit.
Well, and I think too, that's where we kind of sometimes touch a little bit on Sean Payton's ego, right? And I don't like to say that because I know him personally and I think he's an egomaniac. That's not what I'm saying, but we do know he has commitment issues with the run game, big time. He doesn't love it. He wants to be that coach that's getting cutesy with the play calling. He wants to be, again, he's got a long history of being a winning head coach, and it's been reliant on the pass game. But I think when you watch that first half and you see what the Broncos were able to do with a run game that hasn't been super reliable, that hasn't really been impressive, it was working.
Yeah.
Why not commit to that? Why not stick with that? So that's where I think there are some frustrations by fans. We had some people in the comments last night on our long show when we were talking Broncos saying that they did blame Sean Payton a little bit for the loss last night because, again, I think you could probably argue some of the play calling as well. And what was it? There was he didn't run the clock out. What was
at the end of the first half?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did leave enough time to do that punt and allow them to, with the fair catch and the penalty, be in field goal range.
Correct.
And you know what? Mike Shanahan is a very similar coach to Sean Payton. They both went to Eastern Illinois. They were both quarterbacks. They're both offensive minded. They're both considered offensive geniuses. And those guys look at the game in a very similar way, and they put the onus on themselves when they screw up.
Mm-hmm.
When we would have a bad loss, Mike Shanahan would step in front of the team and own it. He'd say, we as coaches have to be better.
Yeah.
And so, I think Sean Payton's going to do the same thing. And he said a little bit of it in the press conference.
He does. He always has a backwards way about it, but he does.
Yeah, he did. We got to coach better and relative to listen, so when you go, it's going to, when you, so he's got 5 trains of thoughts leaving the station at
and
the same
doesn't finish
time.
One of them.
No, he doesn't know which one to hop on.
Right.
Choo-choo!
I would love to be a fly on the wall inside of his brain.
Yeah. No,
what are you thinking about, Sean,
right
right now?
Yeah.
What's got your attention right now? Because you are not focused.
He wants to say so many things, and he's like, nope, let's over.
It's
nope,
none of their business.
maybe
relative to.
Yeah. Well, should we? No, we shouldn't. How can we give him as little as? I don't. So.
It's true. He doesn't complete a sentence.
But you got to think like if you're on his team, if you're a player on that team, he doesn't do that. He says what he feels in front of the team. So he probably doesn't have that sort of this in front of the team. He knows exactly what he wants to tell them, and he probably talks a little too much to them.
I would imagine
they probably sit there like, all right, Sean,
get it.
We got it.
Yep.
But he's very particular. He knows what he wants. He's a very smart coach. And you got to remember, he took a year off a couple of years ago. So are we granting him a little bit of a rope when it comes to getting back in the groove? Should he already be back in the groove by now? Coaches don't coach perfect games, not even the best of them. Even Andy Reid sometimes makes mistakes, clock management, and everyone's like, you should know this by now. But Andy Reid is the highest paid coach and the best in the league, right?
Yeah.
And so no coaches are perfect. And in hindsight, the way the game unfolds sometimes confounds everyone. Like that play last night that resulted in 3 points. It hasn't happened in 50 years.
Yeah. Well, and I do think you make a good point. I do think there is some grace that we can allow to Sean Payton in that year that he missed. I think so much of what we saw with Sean Payton, first of all, in his first year, there were too many messes. We know that. He was cleaning up Hackett's little tiny messes that he left everywhere. So he really couldn't be the coach he wanted to be for the Broncos just yet. So after he cleaned up messes, this is really his first, after that break of coaching, this is really the first season we've been able to see Sean Payton coach the way he wants to coach. Now, the problem is, and it's not really a problem, but I think in that year off, a lot can change in the game. So what worked for him in New Orleans, what worked with Drew Brees, he's had to almost relearn how to be a winning coach in the NFL because the game changes a lot. We talk about how the quarterback position has changed so much. The run game has changed so much. The pass game, I mean, everything about the game has evolved and changed. I think year after year, we see just what worked 2 years ago doesn't work anymore. And so I think that this is a really great season because the Broncos are still winning games. And he's able to then hopefully take this season and figure out what he's got to do better as a coach to put them in better positions to win. Because again, as much as I love that the Broncos are 9-6 and Vegas only predicted them to win 5.5 wins this season. And they're doing it all with a rookie quarterback. They have to be better in the AFC West. They have to be more competitive against their division opponents. And I think some of the dropped balls, not literally, figuratively, were on Sean. And I think he's going to learn. He's going to learn and grow through that. And the fact that he's still learning and growing through that and is still winning games, I think is pretty impressive. So it's, I don't know. It's tough. That game should have been won. They had it. They lost it. Actually, I don't even think they lost it. I think they quite literally handed it to the Chargers.
Yeah, they were outscored, in the second half, whatever. Well, the final score was 34-20. No, I'm sorry, 34-27, right?
34-27.
And it was 24-13 at halftime. So they were outscored 21-3 in the second half.
Oh, that's so gross.
And that was a tale of two halves. Like we talked about, the first half was really good. And so, you mentioned the AFC West. They're going to have an opportunity to beat the Chiefs at home to send themselves to the playoffs if they haven't already beaten the Bengals. That Bengals game is going to be a hard game.
What if they win out?
Well, yeah, then they might, and the Chargers lose a game, then they'll end up leapfrogging the Chargers and end up probably going to Pittsburgh in the opening round. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers could lose a couple games and the Ravens could leapfrog them, and so the Broncos could go to the Ravens in the first round.
We've seen them before.
So I think it's probably the ship has sailed on being the number 5 seed and going to Houston. So I think if the Broncos make the playoffs, they're either going to Buffalo in the first round, Baltimore, or Pittsburgh.
Please give me Pittsburgh.
Yeah, for a variety of reasons, right?
For sure.
Let's ride, Mr. Unlimited.
Because I think, listen, if some of the if you want to give some, discredit or say that Sean Payton is the reason for some of the losses this season, just based on some of his decision-making skills, and he is going to be the most prepared he's probably ever been for the Steelers game, facing Russell Wilson and Mike Tomlin, who right now I would probably classify as a better coach than Sean. I
do too, just because, the Russell Wilson thing, like you're able to get a lot more out of this guy than you were, Sean. And it's because you dropped your ego and met him as a human being and decided to try to get through to him as a person and talk to him and sympathize with him and listen to him. Now, Russell learned a lot being here.
For sure.
Don't do it that way, because that didn't work.
Yeah.
So Mike did get him in a moment where he was probably hat in hand, a little more vulnerable than he was when he came in here, and it was Mr. Unlimited. His little leg. Yeah, I'll do anything you say, Coach. Whereas when he came here, it was Coach Hackett giving him whatever he wanted. And I think Coach Hackett really set Russell back because he was like, yeah, whatever you want, Russell. Sierra's here. Oh my God, I love her music.
Because Hackett was used to doing that freaking crap with Aaron Rodgers.
Exactly.
Whatever Aaron wanted, Aaron got. And that is quite literally the name of the game with what we're seeing with Rodgers right now, is that he puts his little GM pants on. He can get anybody fired. He can bring anybody over that he wants. And I think Hackett is notorious for just letting his quarterbacks just willy-nilly do what you want.
Yeah, apparently Aaron Rodgers really loved Hackett because of his multimedia PowerPoint presentations when he would install the offense. So he made it fun. Liv. And that's why Aaron Rodgers liked Nathaniel Hackett, because Aaron Rodgers was getting old. It was getting boring to him. And Nathaniel Hackett came in and did some juggling and was wearing a clown nose and did a little dance.
Had a laser pointer.
Well, he was a dance instructor too. Did you know that? He was a hip hop dance instructor. Yeah.
Okay. Actually,
you guys would actually get along.
I was going to say, I kind of want to see him break it down.
I saw this documentary thing on Hackett when he was, coming here.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and he was showing his record collection, and it was like Ed Sheeran, and so I'm like, what? You're listening?
Hackett.
No, not okay, Hackett.
Okay,
Ed Sheeran.
Hackett.
You like Ed Sheeran?
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran's pretty weak. I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran's pretty weak? What are you talking about? Have you ever listened to his music?
Yeah, he's like, got to be home at 10:30, and it's already 9:30. What am I going to do? Because my mama keeps on paging me. Because I said stuff like that. But I want your love.
You know what? That was pretty good.
Thank you.
I'll give you that. That was pretty good. But
no, here's the thing. I digress. Where were we? Ding, 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 ding. Let's go back. Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin. What a matchup. Two excellent coaches.
Awesome.
After a game like that, it's easy for us to say, man, Sean Payton sucks. He should be fired. Let's keep it in perspective. The Broncos are 9-6. 9-6 after 15 games, right? No one expected that.
Same record as the Chargers.
Exactly. But the Chargers clearly have the tiebreaker now after whooping up on them twice. And so that's something that doesn't feel good. I know Sean Payton also wanted to beat Jim Harbaugh. You remember that Jim Harbaugh his name was in the hat for a coach here. And actually the Penners and Waltons were flying out to Michigan interviewing Jim Harbaugh about this coaching vacancy. And the word on the street is that they wanted Harbaugh. He was the first choice. Things didn't go well with that. They ended up settling on Sean Payton. Okay, so Sean Payton, his ego relative to coaching searches.
He didn't like hearing that.
No.
He didn't like seeing that through the grapevine.
No, and so he wanted to go whoop them. And they had a plan in place to do so. And to me, they abandoned that plan in the second half because he got a little too enamored with totally understandable what happens when your running game's working. It sucks up the defense, and then you can hit them over the top and start to open up the play action pass. Normally, that does work. But when you see that it isn't,
change it.
Or don't try to do it right off the bat. First half pass, or second half pass. Let's keep running the football. Anyway, hindsight's 20/20 on that one.
Of course.
But we got to feel good about, I think, the win total and the opportunity that lies in front of us as Broncos fans.
Course.
Win one and you're in. Now, the Chiefs, whatever happens with them and the Steelers on Christmas Day is going to determine where the Chiefs are at on January 5th when they come here. If they beat the Steelers and they still only have one loss, then they don't care if they lose.
Right.
To the Broncos, and then they'll rest their starters, right? Because Patrick Mahomes probably needs a little bit of a rest because his ankle hurts.
Doesn't his ankle always hurt?
Right? Isn't it always the ankle?
It's always an ankle.
What
And then
is it?
every time you think it's an ankle, he's got the best game of his life. So
Yeah.
What is the validity of the ankle
I
situation?
think it's like
I actually did say that once, and recently somebody tweeted at me, was like, he literally got folded like a lawn chair. And I was like, okay, well,
whatever.
sometimes I accidentally, my knee gives out and I pull like a lawn chair.
Exactly.
Walk into the kitchen, you know?
Exactly.
Again, I'm not downplaying his injury, guys. I just have seen this story before where he's got an ankle injury and then it ends up being maybe not as severe as as the media wanted us to believe that it was. Okay, well, let's talk just like whole NFL picture right now.
Yeah.
We'll start with the AFC. The teams right now at the top of their divisions: the Bills, 11-3 AFC East; AFC West, the Chiefs, 13-1; AFC North, the Steelers at 10-4. They have been such a treat to watch. And the AFC South, not super threatening in my opinion. The Texans on top at 9-5, but to me, that's a very beatable team. How do you, if you to pick?
I want to give you some props real quick. Do you remember at the beginning of the season when we picked our winner of that division?
Yeah, you guys picked the Jags.
I actually picked the Jags.
Yeah,
they're god awful.
Yeah, and I picked the Texans.
You did.
And believe it or not, I think the Colts really had a shot at being the best team in the AFC South because we have seen CJ Stroud in a bit of a sophomore slump here.
Yeah.
But again, that just shows that the Texans are prepared. They have enough around CJ Stroud that even in a slump, he can still be competitive. And the AFC South, like I said, not a super threatening division by any means, in my opinion.
No.
So based on the AFC and the teams that are at the top of their divisions, right now, who would you pick to come out of the AFC?
I think right now the Bills are playing the best.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to play them. They just beat the Lions, and they're pretty healthy. And Josh Allen playing at a very high level.
I think it's because he's in love.
He's in love with Haley Stanfield, right?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
my
I think
gosh.
he's in love. I think that's what's going on here.
So someone needs to start a rumor that she cheated on him.
Oh my God.
All right. Someone needs to do that. All right. Someone out there create some like
Ignore him.
internet web of lies, man.
Ignore.
Is there a young lady out there who we can pay to make a testimonial about a steamy night you spent with Josh Allen?
Oh my God. You know what? Now we're getting to sabotage mode. And if that doesn't show you how badly we want things to shake out in favor of the Broncos, I don't know what does.
Well, like the old school way of doing that was you'd send some ladies of the night to the hotel room of your opponent the night before the game.
People did this?
Yeah, and pay them and then have them knock on the door and keep them up all night.
Wow. Did you ever do that?
No. We had security.
You sound experienced in
No, this was more like 80s and 90s. When I played, we had security at every floor that doesn't allow anybody on the floor at all. So we would never have anybody knocking on our door unless it was our strength coach bed checking us at 11:15 every night before the game.
Did they ever do the tape thing where they could see if your door opened?
No. Oh, then you would see. Yeah, no.
Like
No,
the
they
tape
didn't do
would
that.
break and then you would.
No,
know
they
that
literally
left.
had cops on every exit, and if you try to get off, they wouldn't let you off, or they would call your coach and tell them that, hey, Nate just left the floor. It was pretty brutal.
So you were in jail.
Yeah, we're grown men. And
You were prisoners.
Yeah, prisoners after 11:15, because they didn't want us, getting into any funny business the night before the game. It was a business trip. So,
Which I'm actually that's how I treat my work trips. I mean, I will go out for the occasional dinner and a cocktail with somebody, for networking purposes or just to catch up. But I don't try to act super rambunctious on work trips. Did I slip up when I was younger? Yeah, you get carried away, you get excited. You're like, oh gosh, now you've got a hangover and you're supposed to be working.
Yeah.
It's not fun. It's
No.
not good for anybody. So yeah, no, not a fan of any of that.
and people think that like NFL players, it's like baseball or basketball where you're on the road and you're seeing all these groupies and stuff like that. It's really not like that at all. You leave the day before the game. You get there, or at least we would get there, get to the hotel around 4:30. We would have dinner at 7. So you have two hours on your own right there. Dinner at 7, then you start meetings at 7:30, 8:30, 9 is the team meeting. And then we had late night snack. and then 2 hours before bed checks were at 11:15. So you have 2 hours in the front, 2 hours in the back, and then bed checks, and then you wake up in the morning and you go to the stadium and play, and then you go straight to the airport and fly home. That was it.
So would you say, maybe this is like a little hot take, this will get the chat going maybe. Would you say that of all the major sports, you've got baseball that travels a lot, you've got NBA players that travel a lot, you've got the NFL that travels a lot.
Football players are the most faithful, yes.
I was just going to say,
Football players are the most faithful.
Would you say NFL players are the most loyal to their partners?
Yes, they are. And because they're kept in a cage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's because you know what?
Imagine a baseball team that's on the road for 2 weeks and staying in the same hotel for 4 or 5 nights and another one, and they don't have to practice at all, and they just don't have curfews or bed checks or meetings because you don't. Like football is the most regimented sport, whereas these other teams, they don't practice. It's all you just show up for the game, and as long as you play, then you buy. We're not going to have meetings and watch film. That's a football thing.
And listen, I think because I work in the industry and I'm also a woman in this industry, I know not firsthand through experience, but through storytelling. Because again, people.
So you tell me who's the most? Is it basketball? Is it basketball?
I don't know baseball.
Who's sliding into your DMs the most?
Oh. We'll go with that. No, I don't know baseball, and I cannot speak on that because I don't ever. Yeah. I'm not around baseball people, and I'm not around hockey people. But there's some slime balls in the NBA for sure.
Yeah.
And you know what? I am, without a doubt. You can ask anybody that knows me. It does not take rocket science to figure out any of the players that are married.
Right.
Have children, in committed relationships.
And so some of those folks are trying to contact you?
And so when they try to move weird, I am just like, are you kidding me?
Do you respond like, hey, get a life, dude? Or do you just not respond? Yeah.
Don't respond.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Don't respond. But again, I don't want to make it sound like my DMs are constantly flooded by these professional athletes. But occasionally you'll get somebody that, you go and do an event, or I'm working Super Bowl and I'm at Radio Row and they shoot you a message. Hey, what are you up to? WYD tonight with an eyeball emoji, and it's like I go to their page and their pinned picture is their wedding photo.
Oh my gosh!
It's like,
oh my gosh!
Oh come on!
You just have to be much more like expressive when you're trying to hit on somebody than just an abbreviated WYD.
But
TN.
It works on women.
Yeah, no,
especially the women that strive to be with somebody like that. It's just, and that's just not me. And that's the other thing. There's so many assumptions about me and my career and all the different things I've done. And the assumption is that I'm outside and I've got this super loaded social calendar and the athletes that I talk to, please, I don't have time for that. You have worked with me long enough now to know that I pretty much clock in, clock out, go home and repeat.
Well, it's also
time for the extra stuff.
And if you want to be good at your job and you're working hard, you can't also be doing that stuff. Mm-hmm. You'll have no energy. Your mind won't be in the right place. You won't have the physical.
I don't want to sacrifice my reputation.
Right.
I don't want to get caught in a crossfire of naughty side business and be roped into that. I am good. I am a homebody family girl. That is like my favorite place to go outside of work is probably my parents' house. To hang with my little sisters and my dogs. Like that is, I'm not big on that scene, on that night scene. So yes, to your point, you have now said NFL players are probably the most loyal to their partners. Yeah. I would say based on what I've heard, NBA players, I think have a tough time keeping it in-house.
Yeah. I will say that when I was playing for the Broncos, there was a female reporter who would come into the locker room dressed like she was going to the club.
Oh gosh.
And I know, several of the teammates that I had and her had relations, and she used to kind of stand at an angle so she could see right into the showers and would just stand there like we'd be naked and she'd just be like,
OMFG. Absolutely not. Oh my gosh. And you know what? One thing I have always said, the moment I become locker room talk, I have lost all of my self-respect. I do not want to be a girl. I want them to be like, damn, that Liv chick is really cool. Like she's really insightful. She knows what she's talking about. She's just cool. Like that's one of my, I actually think that's the coolest compliment to get is she's a cool girl. Like you could just throw her into a room with guys and it's cool. But once you become locker room talk, and I just think being a woman in this space, you have to be very careful with that because people are going to assume that regardless. But if you give them more of a reason to assume it and you give it some validity and some life, Not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if I'm not here in the Gorilla Sports studio or traveling for work, I'm at my parents' house. That's pretty much like, or my own house. But that is like.
So what's going to happen, Liv, when you
They
blow up
know.
and you're in Bristol, Connecticut, working at ESPN, and you can't just go over to your parents' house when you want to chill? You know, like you're going to be in your
Go
mansion.
Go home. Go
Yeah.
home. That is, I really am a homebody, and I think it's that's the way I like to keep it. Truly.
Yeah. When it comes to we were talking about going on the road.
Yeah.
You got, I don't know if you remember, a couple years ago, the Broncos had the Christmas Day massacre when they played the Chargers in LA. And this was Nathaniel Hackett's last game before he got fired because they got, that was Baker Mayfield playing for the Rams, had just shown up. No, not was it the Rams or the Chargers?
Rams.
Okay, so it was the Rams beat the Broncos on Christmas Day.
Brutal.
Like 50 something to in the teens. And Nathaniel Hackett and his staff, rumors were that they were getting hammered in the hotel bar and they were like having a huge party the night before the game and not taking care of business. And everybody saw it, the media members and everybody saw them acting like idiots. And then they go out the next day and lay an egg. And Nathaniel Hackett was fired the day after that. He did not finish the season. He didn't finish his rookie season as a head coach because there were so many things that went wrong. That was the last straw.
He didn't have control of that group at all. They did not respect him. They did not view him as a superior or a
leader,
authoritative figure.
Not at all.
They had zero respect.
He was the camp counselor.
Yeah, he was their buddy.
Yeah,
buddy, old pal.
And
like you can't have that.
Latavius Murray apparently he was a running back for the Broncos at that time, and he was friends with Sean Payton. Was texting Sean Payton like, "Hey man, you got to come get us. Like you got to come here." And he ended up coming here.
Sean Payton really liked Latavius Murray.
Yeah, I mean,
I sat next to him at a Nuggets game.
Oh, really?
Had no idea he had just gotten traded here because wasn't he with? What was he with before the Broncos?
The Raiders, the Vikings. He's bounced around.
A lot of teams. Yeah. But so he's sitting at this Nuggets game, and I sit down. I think FanDuel sent me to this game, so I sit in my seat, and he's sitting there with his daughter, I believe. And I can't help myself. I'm a very social person, so the little girl just kind of kept looking over at me, and I was like, I can't help myself. I'll be very excited to have my own kids someday, not now. And he's sitting there, and I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Liv. And, we're just having conversations back and forth. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, I just moved here for work. And I'm an idiot. I'm like, oh, what do you do for work? I should have known. The dude's humongous. Yeah. Okay. But he was so humble and so kind. And I'm like, oh, what do you do for work? He's like, I actually just got traded to the Broncos. And I was like, holy shit, that's so awesome. Like, I work in sports. I love that. Welcome to Denver. He was very, very cool. I mean, I've met quite a few athletes in my career that are just genuinely good people, and I don't like to say that because it makes the generalization that they're not
like the rest of them are not good people.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it seem that way, but there is a level of arrogance that I think some athletes get when they start making money and start getting they become a household name, and he was just very normal. Again, I don't like that word either because what even is normal nowadays? We don't even know what it is. I'm certainly not normal, but yeah, just very genuine energy. He seemed really, really cool.
And I think, so along the same lines that football players are more faithful to their spouses or significant others than basketball players, I think football players are a little more humble as well than basketball players because, number one, basketball players stick out more just because of their height. And, basketball is about you scoring. You have the ball, the camera's on your face, right? Sure. Football, these guys could walk by you in the street. You don't know who they are.
Correct.
Like 90% of the Denver Broncos could be sitting next to you, aside from their size, but you don't know who they are. The helmets are on.
Yep.
They're just anonymous dudes, and they understand that their job is relatively anonymous because if you're not carrying the ball, if you're not Bo Nix or Cortland Sutton or Marvin Mims, you're not carrying the ball over the goal line. You're not getting that moment, that up-close moment and spiking the ball. You have a different job to do, and that's kind of a more nondescript job that doesn't come with the accolades. And so these guys are humble. They are hard workers. They do know they're part of a team, and they know how to be loyal and faithful. And so to come back to the Broncos and where they're at right now, I think that, look, this is year 2 of Sean Payton's regime. You alluded to that fact. The first year, he's cleaning up Nathaniel Hackett's mess. This is the year you start to see his culture bear fruit. And it has borne fruit. 9, is that right? It's born.
It sounds right to me, so I'm not gonna correct
you.
Yeah.
They're 9-6. Okay, on the doorstep of the playoffs. All you got to do is win one of these next 2 games. You're in. Okay, and This is a sign of good things to come. Has it been perfect? No. Was last night perfect? Absolutely not. They had a great opportunity in front of them, and they let it slip away. But it's going to be a great learning experience. And you look back at some of these coaches who have made the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl. It often happens in year 3. Mike Shanahan came here. It was his 3rd year that he won the Super Bowl. His 2nd year, they were good. They actually got pretty close, but they didn't win that Super Bowl until year 3. I think that this Broncos team is trending in the right direction. They have some things to clean up. Bo Nix didn't play very well last night, but I think ultimately we can feel good about what Sean Payton has done with this culture and with this team. Yes, we can nitpick after a game like that and say Coach Payton could have been better, but this team is playing pretty damn good football.
Yes.
In late December, meaningful games in January. There's going to be a meaningful game on January 5th.
Yep.
And if they win any of these next 2, they're going to be able to play in the playoffs. And who knows what happens in the playoffs. I'll remind people that I was part of this team in 2005. We went 13-3 and got a first-round bye, beat the Patriots in our opening round, and then we hosted an AFC championship game against the Steelers, who were the last seed, and went on the road and beat 3 teams, including us, and went to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl, all being the last seed in the AFC because they caught fire at the right time. I'm not saying the Broncos are on that trajectory. What I'm saying is anything can happen if you get into the playoffs.
Yep. And that's the next step for this Broncos team. I mean, they've just, like you said, they've got to win or tie one of their last 2. And yes, it is some tough competition between the Bengals and the Chiefs, but it's possible. Anything is possible. This Broncos team is still a good team. It's so funny how sad I felt this morning, and they're 9-6.
Yeah.
It's like they're
that
still.
That just shows you where your expectations are now.
Of course.
And how far they've come.
Of course.
That you now expect them to win those games.
Mm-hmm.
And last year and the previous years, we always expected them to lose those games.
Yep.
And so let's pause for a moment and respect how far the Broncos have come in this short amount of time with Sean Payton, and get excited about things to come.
Love it. Okay. Well, I'm trying to read any of these comments that you guys may have.
Yeah, they're a little squinty for us from here. If Thomas, any of those intrigue you, you can throw them up there. Any of those tickle your mustache, Thomas. Thomas is back there controlling the 1s and 2s for us.
Not tickle your mustache.
A little.
That's insane.
Thomas is a young man, an intern who's in here crushing it for us.
Absolutely crushing it.
Yeah, just throw some random ones up there, man. Just click it and tick it. Liv Morgan. Nope.
Okay. I don't know if that's true.
No, that can't be true.
No. Can't be true.
Right.
I'm not falling for that crap. Hey,
right.
Daniel, you do this a lot. My friend. You always get in here and you always say Coach Malone's been fired. And I think you're just trying to manifest. But maybe don't do it in the comment section because you're going to give me a heart attack one of these days.
You want to scroll up a little bit, Thomas? Maybe we can see something that's, Broncos related. If you see anything that touches on anything we were mentioning.
Sounds like that. Maybe the chat was just talking to themselves today. They didn't really care.
Yeah, maybe they were talking to each other, which is cool too.
We like that. That's good.
We like that you guys come here and chat with each other. So,
okay. Well,
anyway.
Quickly before we get out of here, NFC. Eagles at the top of the East, 12-2. Feels like they are absolutely running with that. Behind them,
which is crazy because all season long it's been about Nick Sirianni being on the hot seat. No one respects him, and the Eagles are in turmoil. And AJ Brown's not getting along with Jalen Hurts. Meanwhile, 12-2. So obviously they're doing something right.
Absolutely. NFC West was weird AF this season, probably the weirdest out there. Rams are at the top right now, 8-6, but tied with the Seahawks as well, 8-6. NFC North, Lions 12-2, but the Vikings are also 12-2, and the Packers are not to be underestimated at 10-4.
So who's got the bye right now? Because there's 3 teams at 12-2. I think the Lions did beat the Vikings, so I guess they're ahead of the Vikings right now.
Yeah.
But they might play them again here in the last couple of games. It's going to be an interesting thing to see who gets the bye in the NFC. Maybe it's the Eagles.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Maybe you guys know. Maybe you guys know on a text.
Who knows? But and then NFC South is the Bucs right now, 8-6.
Yeah.
Which
wow. Yeah. I
mean, the Saints started off and people were thinking they were a Super Bowl team, and they're now 5-9.
Someone's making fun of my looks, and the lumberjack is an interesting look. Yeah, it is. I was just chopping wood, man. If you can't handle a man who needs to chop wood to put in his fireplace to heat his home.
Don't piss him off.
I'm going up to the mountains. You want to come with me? Chop some wood? Relative to other wood choppers? Didn't think so.
Relative to the forest? There we go. I think it's a great look. Don't let the haters get you down, Nate.
It's all good. No, it feels. I bought this at Costco.
First of all, Costco has some steals when it comes to. They have like the best sweatpants.
I was gonna put on like a regular like gorilla sweatshirt. I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna wear this what I was wearing this morning.
You're channeling Christmas.
Exactly.
Christmas is near, everybody.
It is. And we wish you a Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. Okay. We'll end with this question from Alex Smith. What do you think the chances are next week versus Cincinnati?
Yeah. Cincinnati Bengals are probably the best offense in the league right now. Joe Burrow having an MVP type season. Jamar Chase having a, MVP type season as far as best receiver in the league. He's up there. And then they got the leading sacker in the league as well on defense. So it's a really interesting season for them to be in the position they're in. They haven't found a way to win. That said, their playoff hopes are still alive. If they beat the Browns this weekend, it sets up a very important game against the Broncos. I think they still have a path to make it into the playoffs if they win this weekend. And so it's going to be a really hard game for the Broncos. They're going to have to regroup. But I will say this. The Broncos had a heartbreaking loss against the Chiefs. And they came back, regrouped, and beat the crap out of the Falcons. I hope they can do the same thing.
Yeah, we just need to regroup.
It's going to be a little different, though. They're on the road. The Bengals are better than the Falcons.
Of course.
Joe Burrow, I mean, you saw what this Chargers offense did against the Broncos defense, and the Chargers offense is not very good.
Right.
But the Bengals offense is, so they're going to have to get after Joe Burrow in a way they weren't able to get after Herbert last night.
Well, and I think too, again, it's tough to make the comparison between the Falcons and the Bengals because they're very, very different teams, but it's the principle of the fact that they were able to regroup and they played significantly better after a emotionally tough loss, a mentally tough loss. And so we saw them lose in a pretty brutal fashion against the Chiefs. They buttoned their stuff up, they regrouped, they got it together, and they dominated against the Falcons. I think they're probably tasting the same blood in their mouth losing against the Chargers that they did losing against the Chiefs earlier this season. So hopefully we just see, again, that regroup, button up, figure out what you've got to do better, and hopefully it's a domination on Saturday against the Bengals. Yeah,
Rodney Garcia mentioning Chase Brown is also a stud running back. So it's not just Joe Burrow through the air. Chase Brown having a pretty fantastic year on the ground. So that offense is doing some pretty special things, and this Broncos defense is going to have to regroup, look themselves in the mirror, and find out how to play better, because Sean Payton after the game talked about how they dropped coverage 5 or 6 times, which means they fucked up. They blew the coverage and guys were running wide open. And that if that happens against the Bengals, it's going to be a lot worse than it was against the Chargers.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, this has been another episode of Off Field. I'm Liv Moods. This is Nate Jackson. This has been presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Head to trustedamerican.com to figure out how they can help you save some money, either getting you a better interest rate or lowering your monthly payments, as well as check out our friends over at Landmark Lincoln. If you need a car, Corsair, GT, something or other hybrid. They've got some really cool cars, but even cooler, they've got some incentives for you. So make sure you head to landmarklincoln.com or check them out on the corner of Broadway and Bellevue and see why they have been Colorado's trusted Lincoln dealer since 1911. Woo! Wow. Okay, we are out of here. Let's go Broncos. We will have a show, I believe, on Monday.
Yeah.
And then it'll be Christmas time. So we're all going to enjoy our Christmas. But then the Broncos play on Saturday, and we'll hopefully have you covered for all things post-game show. I'm sure we will, where we can hopefully react to a win and a playoff berth. So fingers crossed. Let's go Broncos. Thanks for hanging with us, and we will see you very soon. Bye.